And welcome to Nancy's Neighborhood, folks. And I guess you can see the sun is shining outside the window. You know, this is the weather that we really don't know what to do. We dress up in the morning because it's 34 to 41 degrees, and then it's almost 70 degrees in the afternoon. So it's no wonder everybody's sick during this time of year. But I am so thrilled to have on the show with me today a group from an organization called The Bridge. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, and then I'm going to ask them a couple of questions because I'm vaguely familiar with The Bridge, and you all may be more familiar than me or may not know at all. So I want them, first of all, I want them to introduce themselves. So let's start with Miss Reba because she's the lady up here.
All right. My name is Reba Terry, and I'm the executive director of The Bridge.
And my name is Scott Elam. I'm the chair of The Bridge.
My name is Bill Winters. I'm the secretary of The Bridge.
And I'm so thrilled to have them on with me today, folks, because they're going to talk to us about a problem that we really don't like to recognize, but we need to. It needs to not, we need to be proactive instead of reactive on this situation. So I'm going to ask Reba first to start off and tell me just what is The Bridge?
Okay. The Bridge began in 2014 when a group of citizens actually became aware of the immensity of the problem here in Bradley County and were amazed at the evil that it was bringing to our community, and we're not content to just do nothing.
And the problem is?
We have a terrible epidemic of opioid abuse right here. Bradley County has not been exempt.
Absolutely, and it's very hard for some of us to realize because Cleveland, Bradley County is a very special place to live, yes. And it's very hard for us to recognize the fact that we have a problem.
Right. So our primary mission is to reduce, of course, the use of opioids, but to bring awareness primarily to adolescents. We want to protect a generation that's coming ahead and help them to be informed and responsible citizens.
And sometimes I think, well, and I'm getting ready to ask another question, but sometimes I think that our youth are not aware.
They are not, and neither are their parents or their grandparents. So we're just doing.
Oh, so it's not just one generation.
No.
We're going to back it on up.
Yeah.
So my next question, and I asked this question before we started this interview because I am, I don't want to say I'm ignorant, but I'm unaware of some of this. So what is an opioid?
An opioid, there are many. Fentanyl, Percocet, a hydrocodone, an Oxycontin. Those are all opiates. It's primarily used for treating pain. And the different variations of opiates have different things. You know, like fentanyl is basically when we're using primarily for end-of-life type treatment, which is extremely powerful. And then there's carfentanil, and there's so many different layers of potency of these things. So when you say opioids, it's a pretty wide spectrum. What's interesting, you were talking about who's aware or who's unaware. The country is unaware. Now, this is the largest epidemic in our country's history. As a country, we use 80% of the world's opiates with only 4% of the world's population.
Wow.
We're losing more people in 1 year to overdose, that includes opiates, than we lost in the Vietnam War over 10 years.
Oh, good grief.
So if you drill that down, if we say that 58,272 people are who we lost in the Vietnam War, Americans, over 10 years, we're losing 60 to 65,000 a year to addiction, overdose. If you drill that 58, or let's just round that off and say 60,000. If we drill that down, that's over 170 people a day. That's every 8.5 minutes. I suspect we're going to be with you for 15 minutes, so basically 2 people are going to die while we're sitting here talking about this situation.
Wow.
So Bradley County is not different than any other community other than that we're trying to get ahead of it. We're trying to get people aware and woken up to this. When we started 3 years ago, you had to dig long and far to find an article about it. You can look in our own newspaper and you're seeing it virtually on a weekly basis.
Absolutely.
Now. So the awareness is happening, not just here, but in our nation, and with President Trump talking about this and making it a national emergency. You know, we're going to get more awareness, we're going to get more dollars, we're going to get more hopeful help. And you talked about generational. I call it the tornado. Someone's in the grips of this epidemic. epidemic. I call it the tornado. We're finding that the child's in the tornado. If you dig deep enough, now we're finding the parent may be in the same tornado. Now we're seeing you dig deep enough, you may find a grandparent. So this is generational, truly is generational.
Wow.
So it's a huge thing. You don't get to lose this many people without everyone being affected.
That is true.
And this community is waking up and so supportive, and it's just a blessing to be a part of this here and now, and seeing the support that's coming around us. So,
And to
very
me, it's
encouraged.
amazing because, I mean, I grew up just taking an aspirin.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a headache, you take an aspirin. And I was always afraid to take anything any stronger than an aspirin, basically, even if the doctor prescribed it. And so I'm not really ignorant. It's just that I'm unaware.
That's right.
Sure.
It's unaware, and in some cases, you know, we're overprescribing these things. Study after study after study after study shows that we're overprescribing, and it's not, the physician has no malice in his heart. Most of them don't have any malice in
Right.
their heart,
Really.
but they've been misinformed, and that education is becoming more and more aware daily now. And we're actually starting to see where the treatment of opiates for pain is not actually the best thing out there. They're seeing now that a mixture of acetaminophen with ibuprofen in the right numbers is actually treating pain better than opiates. Well, when we started talking about that a few months ago, you had to look long and hard for that. Well, guess what? You're starting to see more and more articles about that. And they're trying to get re-education back down to our physicians so they can properly administer what needs to be handled. You know, there was an article a few weeks ago. In this community, we have a population of 104,000 people,
I think
and they
that's
said
about
we
right, yeah.
wrote over 120,000 prescriptions for
Oh,
opiates.
golly.
And if
Okay.
you look at Tennessee, Tennessee's number 2 in the nation for writing the most scripts of opiates. Well, there's no malice in most of their hearts. It's misinformation, and now that's becoming, that paradigm is shifting, and it's very encouraging right now.
Well, and pain is pain, and there's different levels of pain, and there's different people handle pain differently. So that's one of the things. Now I've got Bill on, and I've already kidded Bill because he's the secretary of this board, and I told him that being secretary meant you had to be quiet and take minutes, but they assured me that wasn't what he did. So your interest on the board, Bill, is
Scott and I and the other people that were in a meeting in 2014 really got gripped with this challenge for our young people. In that particular meeting, we were in Pangle Hall, and we were told that our kids thought we didn't care, and our kids knew more than we knew, and that
Well, now,
we
isn't
were,
that always the
we were,
problem?
it always particularly
Yes.
in many areas, and that we were not responding as a community. From that meeting, we had some small group sessions over breakfast at Cracker Barrel, and said we're going to respond. We're going to make a statement here and let the public know. For many years, and you're in education, and I thank you for your public service.
Oh,
I
well,
thank you
you're
for
welcome. I thank you
with
for
as
your
busy
public
as you
service.
are with all you're doing to do not only this program but public service. Thank you for doing that. But what we wanted to do is make sure the public was aware, and we became very aware that there are a lot of groups that have been working on this problem a long time. One of my best friends, who has just retired from Juvenile Center, Terry Gallagher, shared with me, he said, Bill, you get excited about this because of one meeting. I've been working with this for 20 years.
Oh,
So it got my
gosh.
attention.
Yes.
And from that point, this group began to see what was out there. And there are many groups that are working together, but what we found out was they're not coordinating to a point that they know even what each other are doing. So we began with awareness from there. But the real why that I'm in this, and these two lovely people that do such great work in our community are here talking to you today, is because we don't want our own children to get caught up in this. In my case, my grandkids.
Right.
So every day that we work with this, we're thinking about our own kids, and that are now every one of my 6 grandkids are in public school. They're out of the house. They still have their parents somewhere close because they're all in education now, but they're going to be impacted. And can they make the right decision at the right time? When we started getting into this, we lost a young man that's now public. I think his mother's even shared, Jace Taylor.
Yes.
And it caught us to the grip. And we were sad and still are sad with her family. But we want to make sure that we do all we can, that there aren't others. And that's when we did all those things to start getting the young people in place. We can talk to you about schools and how that's going. But the why of this that we've gotten into it, as Reba said, is to make the public aware. But also the why is to make sure our own kids that are up and down the street. Well, Scott was talking, let me give you an example of what happens here with all these pills.
Okay.
I could name the person. I won't name it on this program, because you would know this person. But this person had a major accident with a part of their extremity. And when this person went to the hospital, when they came out of the hospital after surgery, they got 20 oxycodone. Then they went to a therapist, orthopedic, who gave him or her 20 oxycodone.
More.
He ended up having 60 oxycodone at his house. Each of those three were doing what they thought was best for this person. But the public needs to know that with the pain, and my wife just had a serious surgery about 2 months ago. She needed Percocet to deal with the immediate pain. But she's learned enough from me to know not to take the 20 she got. She took 6, 7, or 8 and put them down and went, as you said, to aspirin and the other, and did very well through that. So we're learning, we're even being educated ourselves in this. So we're learning all this together. But the why is that we have, and I think we initially put together, we want our next generation to give a gift. I'm going to give a lot, you're going to give gifts to your grandkids, we're going to give gifts to our grandkids. But the greatest gift we can give our kids is a drug-free life.
Absolutely.
Besides knowing Jesus Christ, as
Well,
far as I'm
absolutely.
concerned, is a drug-free life. And that's what we spend our time doing, is trying to make sure it gets out there. And these folks have been in your schools. They can tell you about what's been going on in schools.
And see, I think that's important too, to get into the schools. And you all know as well as I do, peer pressure at a certain age is just, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing it and I'm your best bud and we're freshman, sophomore,
Yeah.
then here we go. And that's the thing. So going into our schools, what are you all doing?
Whew. It's been powerful. It's been so sobering. You know, we've gone down as low as 4th grade,
Oh, wow.
and you know, and I tell them I really don't want to be here talking to you about this right now. I'd rather talk about what I do in construction work or something unrelated to this. And so as I start talking about the different things, the alcohol and the cigarettes and marijuana and then prescription pills, and then I'll look up and the next slide is heroin. And I stop and I look at the teachers and the counselors and the coaches in the room. There's 90 little people,
4th graders, yes.
and I'm like, I don't want to do this. You know, I feel like I'm stealing their innocence. And I ask them, I go, how many of you guys have heard of heroin or know what heroin is? Would you say a third of the room?
Wow.
And so then we go down that road. But what I'm learning is we have to empower them with knowledge so they can make informed decisions, and hopefully good ones, and learn how to say no. You know, Nancy Reagan was a great woman, and she had a Just Say No campaign, and a lot of people, I think, discredit that, how powerful that really was. But if you don't have a plan before you need a plan, it's a little late when you're confronted with the.
That's right.
You know, so anyway, I think that was a good thing.
Proactive is always better.
Yeah, reactive is too late.
That's right.
So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to armor these young folks with skills and war games, some scenarios, because and I tell them, some of you have probably already had this conversation or this opportunity, and the rest of you, it's coming. I'm sad to say it's coming, but be positive role models, you know. And there's a great speaker out there, and I forget his name, but he says, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future."
Yes, absolutely. That is very powerful.
So that's what we're trying to do. Trying to give them some education and armor them with good information so they can make informed, smart choices and good decisions. And where can they go?
Yes, and where do you go for help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have a question, who do you go to at the school to ask about something?
Right. We have, you'll see on our literature, especially like our website is atsthebridge.org. And Scott mentioned earlier ATS, and I want to clarify that for your listeners. There's 3 arms of our energy, I guess, of what we do. And A is awareness. T is treatment. While we don't actually provide treatment, we direct folks to resources where they
Okay,
can
that's
get
good to
help.
know. All right.
And then the S is for sustainability.
Yes, and
Okay.
that is very important.
So that's when you see that, that's what this is about. So as we raise awareness, we always want to make sure that we not just expose the problem, but give folks resources. And we have spent time in a training session with all of the county counselors, the school counselors, and giving them lists of resources that we have personally vetted. We've been there, we know what services are provided, and help them to have at least that information on hand, and then they know also they can call us. We also have a contractor that provides assistance for folks if they contact us and tell us they're ready for treatment, they have a child in trouble, they themselves are in trouble, then we can direct them to Steve Morgan, who will help them to get into treatment and then help them with the sustainability piece after they've become clean.
And that's the tough, I see as a tough, well, first of all, admitting that there's a problem.
Absolutely.
But once you try to beat that problem and then sustain it, if you come
Yes.
back out
Yeah.
and your friends have not changed,
Right.
you have the same friends
Right.
that you had when the problem occurred,
Right.
then the sustainability is
Right.
not there.
Yep.
So to me,
Very-
that is so important.
It is. And we have resources available that we can direct folks to. You have to really want to, of course. So goes back to awareness. It's better to prevent the problem than to try to fix it on the other side.
Absolutely.
So we want to empower not only our children but their parents on, not that you have to totally avoid the opioids, but how to use them responsibly.
Right.
And we've learned that for a person who has a genetic predisposition for addiction, that a person can become addicted to opiates within 3 days.
Oh, my goodness.
That's harrowing.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
If you are just ignorant to, what is there, then we have a lot of people who have become addicted because they thought, surely the doctor's not going to prescribe something to me that will hurt me. And it may not have hurt you,
Right.
but it hurts this person because
Right.
we're made so very differently. So you just have to know what questions to ask your physician and how to use what you've been given to your best advantage without becoming addicted to it.
Let me give them the kudos as well.
Okay.
They are the ones that go out into the school.
Oh, that's
And they've been
great.
into about a half dozen plus schools now and present to class after class after class at Walker Valley High School and at the
Lake Forest.
several schools you mentioned there. So they have been in the midst of sharing it. But we also have to say thanks to Dr. Cash for
Yes.
her entree, giving us the opportunity as well as coming alongside of her and your team on the board. The board chair knows generally what is going on with her direction, and we really appreciate that. This could not have happened without her coming on board. When this happened with Jace Taylor,
See, that
she
was
got
just,
it
that
was
was, yeah.
it was a such a sad moment.
Right.
It was a close friend of the family.
Right.
And she was so tight with the mother and the family, and when that hit, it just was the movement that made us move forward. But we asked her one question if she would help work with us, and she said, "Is it about kids?"
Yes.
And we said, "Yes, it is." She says, "I'm on board." And then this happened after that, and been really supportive to make it all go.
And that to me is what's so important, is because of our children. And I think about when I used to open the medicine cabinet at home, there was nothing in there. I mean, there might be a fresh tube of toothpaste or
Right.
this and that and the other. And that's not the case nowadays.
No.
Well, I love that you're segueing into that. You didn't even know it.
Yay for me. Okay.
I would like to challenge your audience. If there's one thing you take away from today, it is to do that. Look in your medicine cabinet. I assure you, there are things in there you don't know are in there. In the day and age we live in now, I've made this challenge 1,000 times, and 99% of the time, someone comes back saying, I told you there was nothing in mine, and heaven forbid I found something. So, look in your medicine cabinet. See what's in there. If you don't need it, then get it properly disposed of. If you have to have it, then get it locked up. And how you can properly dispose of it, the DEA, they have 2 drug take-backs a year
I was going to ask you about
in
that.
April and October. The 10th Judicial Drug Task Force, along with us, did another one in September of this year. So there are those events, but you don't have to wait for those. You can go to the sheriff's department during business hours, and they have a drop box.
Okay.
And you can give it to those guys, and it's completely anonymous. They're not going to ask you any questions. Just they want them off the street just as much as anyone else. Another place you can go is Cook's Pharmacy, and you can see those folks, and they can
Okay.
get them properly disposed of.
Okay.
So the challenge is, look in your medicine cabinet, see what's in there. What you don't need, get it properly disposed of. What you have to have, get it locked up. Over 53% of the prescription drugs that are on the market right now are coming from a friend or family member. That means that's coming from a physician, which means it's coming from a medicine cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
If we drill that down, only 4% come from a drug dealer. So all the rest of that,
Okay.
one way or another, is coming from these other resources.
From our medicine cabinet at home,
So-
and that's a shame. And you know, I think about this, and I think about our kids, and I think about, of course, I grew up at the time when, like I say, there was a tube of toothpaste, and that, you know, basically that was it. But today that's not the case. And I used to, when I used to take my mother-in-law to the doctor, she'd always take this sack full of pills and show the doctor everything that she was taking. And I'm thinking, you know, you were talking about your friend that got 20 here and 20 here and 20 here. Is it just a non-awareness of the fact that I've already gotten 20 of these, or, you know, is it something we can do to prevent some of these?
Obviously, those three didn't know the others were doing
That's-
it.
yes.
And each thought, and we're not putting them under the bus
No,
at all.
no, let's not throw
We're saying
anybody
they're
under the bus.
professionals, and their job is to get you and me and us out of pain. And that's what they've been taught to do, is to do it with it so that for as many days as you have that extreme pain, you take and not have to come back to them. But what we've seen is it has added to them still being sitting there when you don't need it, and then the little hands get into it. And as well as when you have a bad day and you want some help with the pain, some other pain, you toss
There
it
you
again,
go.
and
Yeah,
then you're
that's-
caught into it.
That's
So-
not, and it's so sad about Jace that this is what had to kick this off to make us aware.
Sure.
But we now are aware.
Yes.
And we realize it is a problem. And I'm so grateful to you all for starting the bridge. And now tell us how, you have a website.
We do, atsthebridge.org. We have a phone number, 423-464-4600. And then also we are on Facebook at ATS The Bridge.
ATS, which is Awareness,
Treatment.
and
Sustainability.
Sustainability. Okay, so ATS The Bridge. And so thank you all so much for being on with me today, because I really
pleasure.
appreciate it, and just to know awareness. That's it.
That's right.
You know, and like I
So
said,
good.
what's an opioid?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so now we know. So
Yeah.
this has been extremely informative, folks, and I really thank you all so much for being on with me.
Thank you.
Folks,
Thank
don't
you
go
for having
away.
us.
I'll be back to tell you about some happenings that are going on. So do what I always say. Watch our commercials, support our sponsors because they pay our bills, and I'll be right back.